I should have seen it coming. Maybe I did. Maybe I just didn't want to believe that the man I'd given up everything for could become someone I no longer recognized. The apartment was quiet when Ethan came home that Tuesday evening. Not the comfortable quiet we used to share over cheap wine and takeout Chinese food. This was different, heavier, the kind of silence that settles in when two people have already said goodbye in their hearts but haven't found the words yet. I was at the kitchen counter chopping vegetables for dinner. Nothing fancy. We never did fancy. 4 years of marriage had been built on simple meals, secondhand furniture, and the kind of love I thought could survive anything. I thought being enough for each other meant more than being enough for the world. Anna, we need to talk. I set down the knife. Slowly. Because somehow I knew that whatever came next would cut deeper than any blade ever could. Okay. He didn't sit. Just stood there in his new suit, the one he'd charged to our credit card last month. The one he said he needed to make the right impression at networking events. Events I was never invited to anymore. This isn't working. 4 words. That's all it took to begin dismantling 4 years. What isn't working, Ethan? Us. This. He gestured around our small kitchen like it was evidence in a trial. I need more than this, Anna. I've been thinking about it for months now, and I just can't do this anymore. I leaned against the counter, gripping its edge. Do what exactly? Be married to me? Be stuck. The word came out sharp, bitter. Everyone at the firm is moving up, moving forward. They have wives who open doors for them. Women with connections, with family money, with something to offer besides moral support and homemade dinners. There it was, the thing that had been growing between us like mold in the dark corners of our marriage. His resentment, his shame, his endless gnawing belief that he deserved more than what we'd built together. I see. My voice came out steadier than I felt. And you found someone who can offer you those things? He had the decency to look uncomfortable. For about 3 seconds. Vanessa Clark, you've met her, at the Henderson reception last month. I remembered. Tall, polished, dripping in diamonds and designer labels. She'd looked at our apartment building's address on the invitation list like it was a typo. She'd looked at me the same way. Vanessa. I tested the name on my tongue. It tasted like expensive champagne and empty promises. The one who's been calling your phone at 11 p.m. to discuss work emergencies? She believes in me, Anna. She sees my potential. She wants to help me reach it. And I don't? You want me to be happy with this? Again, that dismissive gesture. With barely scraping by, with shopping at thrift stores and pretending we're bohemian when really we're just broke. Vanessa understands ambition. She respects it. I thought about the girl I'd been 4 years ago. 24 years old, standing in my parents' marble foyer with a suitcase in my hand and my heart full of defiant love. I thought about my mother's face when I told her I was choosing Ethan over everything they could give me. You're making a mistake, Anna, she'd said. That boy doesn't love you. He loves the idea of you. And the moment he finds someone who fits his idea better, you'll see exactly what you've given up for him. I'd called her a snob. I'd said she didn't understand real love. I'd walked out that door, and I hadn't walked back through it since. So you want a divorce? I said it flatly. A statement, not a question. I think it's best for both of us. You deserve someone who's content with simple. I'm not that person, Anna. I never was. The laugh that escaped me was sharp enough to make him flinch. You certainly were that person when we met. When you were living in that studio apartment with 3 roommates and eating ramen for dinner 4 nights a week. When you couldn't afford to take me anywhere nicer than the free museum days and park benches, you seemed pretty content with simple then. People grow, Anna. People want more from life. No, Ethan. People change when they forget where they came from, when they start measuring their worth by someone else's bank account. His jaw tightened. There was the anger I'd been waiting for, the defensiveness that came whenever anyone suggested he might be less than he imagined himself to be. At least Vanessa comes from somewhere worth remembering. At least she can introduce me to people who matter. What do you bring to the table, Anna? What have you ever brought besides your willingness to slum it with me? The words hung in the air like poison gas. I watched them register on his face, the slight widening of his eyes that said he knew he'd gone too far. But he didn't take them back. People never do when they've finally said what they've been thinking all along. You know what's funny? I moved away from the counter, closer to where he stood. Close enough to see the new watch on his wrist. Gold. Expensive. A gift from Vanessa, no doubt. I always wondered when this would happen, when you'd finally look at me and see a limitation instead of a partner. I just didn't expect it to hurt quite this much. Anna, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. You meant every word. And that's fine. That's actually good in a way, because now I know exactly who you've become. I walked past him into our bedroom. Our suitcases were in the closet. I pulled mine out and set it on the bed. What are you doing? Making this easy for you? You want out? You're out. I'll stay with a friend until we can figure out the apartment. Anna, wait. Let's talk about this like adults. I spun around. Like adults? You just told me I'm not good enough for your new life. You compared me to your mistress and found me wanting. What exactly is there left to talk about? She's not my mistress. Nothing's happened between us. Yet. Nothing's happened yet. But it will, won't it? The moment these papers are signed, you'll be climbing into her bed and her bank account, and you'll finally feel like you've made it. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I used to find endearing. Now it just looked practiced, rehearsed. Like everything about him had become a performance for an audience that didn't include me. Why are you being like this? Like what? Honest? You started this conversation, Ethan. You're the one who came home and announced our marriage was over because I don't come with enough connections and capital. I'm just finishing it. I thought you'd fight for us. The audacity of that statement almost made me laugh again. Fight for us? There is no us anymore. You killed us the moment you decided I wasn't worth keeping unless I could advance your career. I started pulling clothes from our dresser, methodically, calmly. Each folded shirt and pair of jeans a small act of reclaiming myself. You're not even going to try to change my mind? I stopped, looked at him directly. Really looked at him, maybe for the first time in months. No, Ethan, I'm not, because you're right about one thing. People do grow, and I've grown enough to know that I deserve someone who values what I actually am, not what I can do for their social climbing. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Let me tell you about fair. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my half-packed suitcase beside me. 4 years ago, I met you at that coffee shop. Do you remember? You couldn't afford the sandwich you wanted with your latte, so you just got the coffee. I was behind you in line. I watched you count out quarters and decide between caffeine and calories. I remember. You were so embarrassed, but I thought it was charming, real. I'd spent my whole life around people who'd never had to choose between anything, and there you were, making the small calculations that poverty demands. I fell in love with that honesty. Anna, let me finish. We started dating. You took me to free concerts and museum days. We had picnics in the park with grocery store wine and cheese. You told me you wanted to build something real, something that mattered more than money. Do you remember saying that? He looked away. People say a lot of things when they're young and stupid. They do. And then some people grow up and realize those things were the truest words they ever spoke. Others grow up and decide truth is less important than status. I stood up, continued packing. When I told you I wanted to marry you, my parents lost their minds. Did I ever tell you that? How hard they fought against it? You said they had concerns. Concerns. The word felt too small. They had full-scale interventions. My mother cried for 3 days. My father threatened to cut me off completely. They brought in lawyers, therapists, financial advisors. Anyone who might talk sense into me. Because I wasn't good enough for their daughter. Because they could see exactly what kind of man you'd become if you ever got the chance. They saw your ambition, your hunger for more, and they knew that one day you'd look at me and see an obstacle instead of a partner. Ethan's face had gone pale. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that I gave up everything for you. Everything. My family, my trust fund, my entire life. I walked away from it all because I believed in us more than I believed in any of it. Trust fund? Anna, what are you saying? I zipped up my suitcase, turned to face him one last time. My full name is Anna Catherine Miller, formerly Anna Catherine Hartwell. My father is Thomas Hartwell. You might have heard of him. He owns Hartwell Industries. The company whose board members you've been desperately trying to network with for the past 6 months. I watched the color drain completely from his face, watched understanding hit him like a physical blow. That's not possible. Why? Because I don't act rich? Because I was willing to live in this apartment and shop at Target and cook dinner instead of ordering in? Because I never once made you feel small for having less than me? Anna, I don't. My parents were right about you. That's the part that really stings. They saw exactly who you were, and I defended you. I chose you over them, over everything they could have given me. And you know why? He couldn't speak, just stood there, looking like his entire world had tilted on its axis. Because I thought love mattered more than money. I thought partnership mattered more than status. I thought you'd see that I chose you, really chose you, when I could have chosen anything else in the world, and that would mean something to you. Anna, wait, if you're really a Hartwell, you can Google it, Ethan. There are photos from my debutante ball, society page mentions, charity events I attended before I met you. It's all there. I just stopped being that person when I became your wife. I picked up my suitcase, walked toward the door. You wanted someone who could open doors for you. Someone with connections and money and all the things you think equal success. You had her all along. You just couldn't see it because you were too busy looking at what I didn't have instead of what I'd given up. Anna, please, let's talk about this. We can figure this out. I stopped at the threshold, looked back at him one more time. No, Ethan, we can't. Because even now, I can see it in your eyes. You're not sorry you hurt me. You're not sorry you betrayed 4 years of marriage. You're just sorry you made a strategic error. You're calculating how much my family name could have helped your career. That's not love. That's not even regret. That's just another transaction. That's not true. Isn't it? If I were still just Anna Miller, working class girl who married above her ambitions, would you be asking me to wait? Would you be trying to fix this? His silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. Goodbye, Ethan. I hope Vanessa gives you everything you think you need. I really do. Because you're going to need it when you realize what you actually lost. I walked out, down the stairs of our apartment building, out into the cool evening air. My phone started buzzing before I even reached my car. Ethan. Calling, texting, calling again. I turned it off. 3 days later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office signing divorce papers. Clean split. No alimony sought or offered. I didn't want his money. I'd never wanted money. That was the point he'd never understood. My lawyer, Patricia, was a family friend. She'd known me since I was 16. You know your parents would take you back in a heartbeat. I know. You could contest this. Take him for everything. He's the one who initiated divorce proceedings while having an emotional affair. I could. But you won't? No, I won't. She studied me over her reading glasses. Because you still love him? Because I still love myself, and taking revenge on Ethan won't change what happened. It won't make him a better person. It won't undo his choices. It'll just make me bitter, and I refuse to let him turn me into that. Patricia smiled. Your mother raised you well, even if you didn't want to admit it. Don't tell her that. She'll never let me live it down. Speaking of which, have you called them? Not yet. I'm not ready for the I told you so conversation. They won't do that. They'll just be glad you're coming home. Home. The word felt strange. Foreign. I'd spent 4 years building a home with Ethan, and now that was gone. But my parents' house had never really been home either. It had been a museum, a showcase, a place where everything was beautiful and nothing was real. I'm not going back there, Pat. I can't. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not being Ethan's wife or the Hartwell daughter, just Anna, whoever that is. You'll figure it out. You're stronger than you think. I hope so. The papers were filed on a Friday. By Monday, my phone was flooded with messages from Ethan. Not the desperate pleas of a man who'd lost his love. The panicked bargaining of someone who'd realized he'd burned a very valuable bridge. I didn't answer. Tuesday morning, he showed up at my hotel. I don't know how he found out where I was staying. Maybe he'd hired a private investigator. Maybe he'd called in favors. It didn't matter. I met him in the lobby. Neutral territory, witnesses. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes. Rumpled clothes. The gold watch was gone. Anna, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for days. I know. I've been ignoring you for days. It's called boundaries, Ethan. You should try developing some. Please, just hear me out. 5 minutes. You already said everything worth saying. You wanted a divorce. You're getting one. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I was caught up in this idea of who I should be, and I lost sight of what actually mattered. Me. I'm what actually mattered, and you threw me away like I was nothing. I know, and I hate myself for it. But we can fix this. I'll call off the divorce. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. I looked at him, really looked, searching for any trace of the man I'd fallen in love with. The one who'd been content with coffee shop dates and park benches. The one who'd promised me that we were enough. He was gone, if he'd ever really existed at all. Ethan, answer me honestly, if you'd never found out about my family, would you be here right now? He hesitated, just for a second. But that second told me everything. I thought so. You don't want me back. You want access to what I can give you. There's a difference. That's not fair. Life rarely is. You taught me that. Anna, please, I love you. No, you love the idea of me now that you know my net worth. That's not the same thing. I've loved you since the day we met. You loved who you thought I was. Poor Anna. Uncomplicated Anna. Anna who'd be grateful for whatever scraps of affection you tossed her way. The moment you found out I had options, I became valuable to you. That's not love. That's opportunism. You're not being fair. You lied to me about who you were. There it was. The anger. The resentment that had been lurking under his performance of remorse. I didn't lie. I just didn't advertise my bank balance. I wanted you to love me for who I was, not what I had. Apparently, that was too much to ask. If you'd told me the truth from the beginning, you would have married me for my money instead of what you thought was love, and then we would have had a different kind of terrible marriage. Either way, Ethan, we weren't meant to last. Because you've never valued what can't be quantified or networked or leveraged for professional gain. That's not true. Then tell me, what did you love about me? Really love? He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. You were kind and patient, and you believed in me when no one else did. I was useful. I made you feel good about yourself. I was the perfect supporting character in your success story, until you decided you needed someone with better credits. Anna, I'm done, Ethan, with this conversation, with this marriage. With pretending that you're going to wake up one day and realize that people are worth more than their connections. Sign the papers. Move on with Vanessa. I hope she gives you everything you think you want. What about what you want? The question surprised me, maybe because it was the first time in months he'd asked it. I want to remember why I fell in love with you. I want to believe that it wasn't a complete waste of 4 years. I want to forgive myself for being naive enough to think that love could be enough. Is it? Enough? I smiled, sad and small and true. For me, it was. For you, it never will be. And that's the real tragedy here. Not that we're getting divorced, but that you'll spend the rest of your life chasing something you already had and threw away. I turned to leave. Anna, wait. What are you going to do now? I looked back at him one last time. Live my life. Figure out who I am without you. Maybe reconnect with my family. Maybe not. Maybe travel. Maybe start a business. Maybe just exist for a while without having to prove my worth to anyone. The beauty of not being your wife anymore is that I get to choose, and my choices don't have to benefit anyone but me. I really did love you. I hope you know that. I believe you loved me as much as you're capable of loving anyone. It just wasn't enough to overcome your love of what you thought you deserved. I walked away, out of the hotel lobby, out of his life, out of the small, suffocating world we'd built together. My phone rang as I reached my car. My mother. I took a breath. Another. Then I answered. Hi, Mom. Anna, sweetheart. I heard about the divorce. Of course she had. Nothing happened in our social circle without her knowing within 24 hours. News travels fast. Are you all right? The question surprised me. I'd expected judgment, recriminations, the I told you so speech I'd been dreading. I'm getting there. Good, that's good. A pause. Your father and I would love to see you. If you're ready, no pressure, no lectures, just dinner, as a family. I felt tears prick my eyes. Stupid tears, weak tears, but honest ones. I'd like that. Tonight, tomorrow, next week. Next week, I need a few days to pull myself together. Take all the time you need, darling. We'll be here when you're ready. She hung up. I sat in my car, watching people walk past, living their lives, carrying their own complicated histories and hopes and heartbreaks. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I hope you're happy. You ruined everything. Vanessa, it had to be. Apparently, Ethan's shiny new prospect had lost interest once his financial prospects dimmed. Funny how that worked. I deleted it without responding. 3 months later, I was sitting in a coffee shop, the same one where I'd met Ethan all those years ago. I hadn't planned it, just ended up there on a Tuesday morning, craving decent espresso and a moment of solitude. I was reading some novel about second chances and new beginnings. The kind of thing I would have found unbearably cheesy 6 months ago. Now, it felt like a roadmap. Excuse me, is this seat taken? I looked up. A man about my age, nice smile, holding his coffee in a worn paperback. It's all yours. Thanks. Everywhere else is packed. We sat in companionable silence for a while, both reading, both content to share space without needing to fill it with conversation. Eventually, he spoke again. Can I ask you something weird? Depends on the question. Why are you reading that book instead of using your phone like everyone else in here? I smiled. Because sometimes I need to remember that stories can have happy endings. Rough year? Rough few years, but getting better. I'm glad. Everyone deserves better eventually. He went back to his book. I went back to mine. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt something that might have been hope, not for romance, not for reconciliation, not for anything except the simple possibility that I might be okay, that I might even be more than okay, that maybe, just maybe, losing Ethan wasn't the end of my story, just the end of the chapter where I forgot my own worth. The rest was still unwritten, and this time I got to write it myself.